Mom, we're taking a trip to Europe tomorrow. I already sold the beach house and your car. We needed the money. Bye. The phone went dead. Margaret Hayes gripped the receiver, staring at it as if it might sprout answers. 45 years raising Emily, giving everything for her happiness, and now she was tossed aside as if she were nothing. Yet, somehow, a small smile crept onto Margaret's face. There was something her daughter didn't know. She had become a widow 6 months ago. Thomas, her husband of 47 years, had passed quietly one morning, clutching his coffee as they sat across from each other at the kitchen table. "Good morning, my love," he'd said, brushing her hair back. That had been the last time she heard his voice. Emily had been insistent about staying close after that. She visited 3 times a week, helped with groceries, arranged flowers, and urged Margaret to see a doctor. "You have to take care of yourself now, Mom," she'd said with a smile Margaret thought was full of love. But the call she just received revealed the truth. It had been convenience, nothing more. The beach house had been a lifetime of memories, a sanctuary of laughter and celebrations. Birthdays, Christmases, summer nights under the stars. Emily had always been part of it, bringing boyfriends, then Daniel, and eventually claiming that her happiness was tied to it. And now, all gone, reduced to numbers in a bank account. The old Ford pickup Thomas had cared for like a child, polished every Sunday, it sat lingering in the cab, now sold without so much as a thought. The chair in the doctor's office felt oddly comforting as Margaret inhaled deeply. She did not cry. She did not scream. For the first time in months, she felt calm, a clarity that surprised her. Because she remembered. 3 days before Thomas died, he had handed her a thick manila envelope. "Margaret, put this in the dresser. Only open it when you're ready," he had said. She had tucked it away, caught up in funeral plans and grief, and forgotten entirely. But now it waited for her, patient and silent. The doctor had just given her a clean bill of health. "You're strong for your age," he said. "Just rest and eat well." Margaret smiled, nodding, but her thoughts were elsewhere, on the envelope, on Emily's call, and on Daniel, who had never hidden his disdain for her. The bus rumbled along, and Margaret sat by the window, watching the city pass, the familiar rhythm of lives moving forward, each carrying their own stories. She had her own secrets now, and the power to reclaim them. At home, she went straight to her bedroom and opened the drawer. The envelope was there, exactly as Thomas had left it. Her hands trembled, heart pounding as she pulled out the documents. His handwriting on the front read her name clearly. She sat on the bed they had shared for decades, took a deep breath, and for the first time since his death, felt a surge of hope and quiet resolve. Emily thought she had stripped her mother of everything. But Margaret Hayes was about to discover that Thomas had already ensured she never truly had nothing. It was dusk, and shadows crept across the rooms in the way they always did, but they no longer frightened Margaret Hayes. She sat on the edge of the worn sofa, the manila envelope resting on her lap like a fragile promise. With deliberate slowness, as though unwrapping something precious, she peeled back the flap. What she discovered inside made her gasp. Sheets of crisp paper, neatly organized, revealed a life she hadn't fully known. Legal documents, property deeds, stock certificates, and a letter in Thomas's familiar, precise handwriting. Her hands trembled as she unfolded it, a mix of disbelief and awe gripping her. "My dearest Margaret," it began. "If you are reading this, I am no longer by your side. Forgive me for not telling you everything while I was alive, but my intention was always to protect you from unnecessary worry. Over the years, I invested our savings carefully and quietly. We are not only owners of the beach house, we have multiple properties across the city, including the apartment building where Emily and Daniel live. There are also shares in several companies, each worth far more than you ever imagined. You have always been wealthy in spirit, my love, but now you are wealthy on paper as well. Tears welled in Margaret's eyes as she sifted through the documents. There were deeds for homes tucked into quiet neighborhoods, a condo in the bustling downtown, a small seaside inn, and yes, the towering apartment building that Emily and Daniel called home. Thomas had been the silent owner for a decade, placing all assets under the name of a company Margaret had never heard of. The papers confirmed it, she was the sole beneficiary. Among the documents were bank statements for accounts she never knew existed, numbers so large they seemed unreal. Thomas had spent 40 years driving buses, earning modest wages, but he had also been a shrewd, patient investor. Every sacrifice, every bit of their savings, had been multiplied quietly, carefully, with her future in mind. The letter explained his reasoning. He had hidden their fortune not out of secrecy, but love, for Margaret and for Emily. "I wanted our daughter to love us for who we are, not for what we have," he wrote. "If she ever knew the truth, I feared it might change her heart." Margaret sat back, absorbing the irony. Emily had left thinking she had nothing, believing they were destitute, when in fact they possessed more than most could imagine. That night, sleep evaded her. She wandered the house, touching familiar objects, the faded armchair, the vase Thomas had brought back from a trip, the photos Emily had once scorned as old-fashioned. She paused in front of a framed photo of Emily at 5, perched on Thomas's lap, laughing without a care in the world. When had that little girl turned into the calculating woman who had just dismissed her so coldly? Morning came with an unexpected call. Emily's voice on the other end sounded softer, almost careful. "Mom, how are you?" she asked. "We transferred the money from the house and the car. We put your share in your account. It's not a fortune, but it should help while you look for something smaller." Margaret's tone was steady, controlled. "Your share?" "Yes, Mom. We gave you 30%. That's fair, right? We need the rest for our investment in Europe. Daniel has this incredible opportunity over there. 30% of her own possessions." She could feel the absurdity rising. "That's very generous," she said, letting the words roll off her tongue. "When do you leave?" "This afternoon," Emily replied lightly. "We'll be gone at least 6 months. Maybe more if the business goes well. Don't worry, Mom, when we return we'll help you find a small apartment, something suitable for your needs." Margaret set the phone down, staring at it with a mix of incredulity and amusement. And then she laughed, a deep, hearty laugh that she hadn't felt in months. The situation was absurd, almost comical. Her daughter had tried to rob her, to push her out, all in pursuit of an adventure that would likely teach them lessons they hadn't anticipated. But Margaret's laughter held more than humor. It carried relief, pride, and quiet triumph. Money had never been her measure of security, love and wisdom had been. And now, with Thomas's foresight protecting her, she realized Emily's attempts at manipulation were meaningless. She had everything she needed, not just wealth, but clarity, dignity, and the final, undeniable truth: she was stronger than anyone, even her own daughter, had believed. That morning, Margaret Hayes felt the weight of years lift from her shoulders. The house was still filled with shadows, yet she welcomed them now. They reminded her that even in darkness, light had a way of finding its way home. 45 years of my life devoted to her, every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every ounce of unconditional love, and Emily had erased me with a simple phone call. That sting cut deeper than anything else. I logged into my bank account, expecting relief, but what I saw was almost laughable. They had deposited an amount that likely seemed generous to them, but to me it was a mockery. The beach house had been sold far below its true value, no doubt because they needed cash quickly. And Thomas's old Ford, the truck he'd cherished, polished, and maintained as if it were alive, had been sold for next to nothing. From my window that afternoon, I watched Emily and Daniel load their suitcases into a waiting cab. Daniel hoisted 2 massive suitcases onto the trunk, while Emily clutched a carry-on that looked expensive enough to earn admiration from anyone with taste. They laughed, whispered, kissed, and made plans, completely oblivious to my presence. They never glanced toward the window, never offered a farewell. When the cab pulled away, the sound of the engine fading, I sat in the kitchen, cradling a cup of tea, Thomas's documents spread out before me like pieces of a puzzle waiting to be solved. I could call a lawyer, reclaim everything through legal channels, and punish them for what they had done. But an inner voice told me there was a more strategic way, one that would teach Emily a lesson without ever alerting her that I knew the full extent of our wealth. I dialed Mr. Peterson, Thomas's attorney, a man who had been at the funeral, offering condolences and telling me to call if I ever needed guidance. Now, I needed guidance more than ever. "Mrs. Hayes," he answered warmly. "It's good to hear from you. How are you?" "I'm well, Mr. Peterson. But I found some documents from Thomas, and I need your help understanding them." "It's urgent." "Of course. Come to my office tomorrow morning. We'll go through everything together." That night, for the first time in months, I slept soundly. Thomas appeared in my dreams, seated in his favorite chair, the newspaper in his hands as he always had been. When he looked at me, his eyes twinkled. "It's about time, my love," he said. "It's time you stood up for yourself." I awoke with a clarity I hadn't felt since his passing, not happiness, exactly, but a fierce determination. For the first time, I had a purpose, a plan. I would reclaim what was rightfully mine, but not in the way Emily expected. The next morning, I dressed with intention. I chose the deep burgundy dress Thomas had always admired, the one he said made me look poised and elegant. I brushed my hair carefully, applied a touch of makeup, and when I looked in the mirror, I saw a woman I hadn't recognized in years, a woman both strong and unyielding. Mr. Peterson's office was downtown, an elegant building with marble floors and towering windows. He greeted me with his usual warmth, but when I presented Thomas's documents, his expression shifted. "Mrs. Hayes, this is extraordinary." Thomas was brilliant. "These documents, you are the sole owner of everything." "I've reviewed them already," I said. "What I need to know is what I can do legally." He nodded. "Everything is legitimate. You are the rightful owner of all properties. The beach house, the condo, the inn, the downtown apartment building, they all belong to you. The sale Emily conducted was unauthorized. We can reverse it immediately and even pursue legal action against her for fraud." I shook my head, a calm smile spreading across my face. "No, Mr. Peterson. I don't want a lawsuit. I want to do this differently. Discreetly. Can you help me?" Curiosity flickered in his eyes. "Of course. What's your plan?" "I need the beach house returned quietly. Nullify that fraudulent sale, and help me gain full control of every property, especially the building where Emily lives. But I want no one to know it's me doing this, at least not yet." He nodded, understanding. "It will take a few weeks, but it's completely possible. Everything can be done without alerting anyone." As I stepped out onto the bustling streets of downtown, I felt as though I had woken from a long, dreamless sleep. The city pulsed around me, people hurrying, cars honking, life continuing as usual. But for me, nothing would ever be the same. I had a plan. I had power. And Emily had no idea how much she had underestimated me. For the first time since Thomas's passing, I felt alive, unstoppable, and in control. The game had only just begun, and I intended to win. The weeks that followed were unlike anything I had ever experienced. Outwardly, I was Margaret Hayes, a fragile, abandoned widow, a woman everyone assumed had lost everything. But in secret, I was quietly reclaiming my fortune, orchestrating the return of everything Thomas and I had built. Mr. Peterson was diligent, calling me every few days with updates on the progress of the legal work, each call making me feel a little lighter, a little more in control. I chose to remain in my house, despite Emily no doubt expecting me to retreat to a single, modest room. This house was mine, after all, the home where Thomas and I had shared decades of life, laughter, and quiet mornings over coffee. Each day I would wake, sit at the same breakfast table, and then take a walk through the neighborhood. The neighbors greeted me with the familiar mix of pity and curiosity reserved for women in mourning. Aurora, my longtime neighbor, approached one afternoon while I tended the flowers in the front garden. "Margaret, dear, is it true that Emily left for Europe and didn't say goodbye?" she asked, her voice filled with concern. "Yes, she went with Daniel. They have business plans over there," I replied evenly. "And, how are you managing? Everyone says Thomas didn't leave much behind." I smiled politely, hiding the truth. "Oh, I'll be fine, Aurora. Thank you. I really appreciate your concern, but I'm doing well." She studied me for a moment, that mixture of compassion and subtle relief that it wasn't her misfortune. "Well, you know where to find me if you need anything." These conversations played out repeatedly: the butcher, the baker, the woman at the corner store. Everyone spoke to me with the soft, almost cautious tone reserved for the unfortunate. And I nodded, smiled, and thanked them, while secretly enjoying the quiet thrill of my double life. Then, one Wednesday morning, Mr. Peterson called. "Mrs. Hayes, I have excellent news. The sale of the beach house has been nullified. The buyers weren't aware the sale was improper, so we returned the funds to them, and the house is officially yours again." "That's wonderful," I said, a small thrill of satisfaction rising in me. "The apartment building where Emily lives is slightly more complex. Technically, you've always been the true owner through the company, but we need to make some administrative adjustments to give you direct control. It should take another 2 weeks." "Very well. Keep me updated." After hanging up, I sat in the kitchen with my coffee, thinking about Emily. She had been in Europe for 3 weeks, and there was no word from her, not a call, not a text, not even a postcard. To her, I had vanished the moment she got the money she wanted. But that would change, and soon. I decided to visit the beach house. I took the bus to the coast, the same route Thomas and I had traveled countless times. The house appeared just as I remembered it, cream-colored, modest, with a porch facing the ocean. Someone had added a few potted plants to the steps, but otherwise, nothing had changed. I sat on the curb across the street and let memories wash over me. Summer afternoons when Emily was little, running barefoot on the sand, building castles with pure joy. Thomas at the grill, me preparing salads in the kitchen, the house alive with friends, laughter, birthdays, and holidays. All of it, reduced by Emily to a mere transaction, a financial resource. An older man emerged from the house and noticed me sitting quietly. "Are you all right, ma'am?" he asked, approaching cautiously. "Yes, thank you. I'm just remembering," I replied gently. "I see. I knew the previous owners," he said, shaking his head. "It's unfortunate what happened. Did they tell you much?" I asked softly. "They said the mother was unwell, that the daughter handled the sale quickly. We didn't know the full story at first, it was all through intermediaries. It's a shame, really. If only he knew," I thought, "how truly complicated and bittersweet it was." "Yes, I'm glad everything worked out fairly," he said. "We liked this house a lot. Now we have to find another." I smiled to myself, thinking about the invisible threads of control I had quietly begun to weave, threads that would ensure the life Emily had tried to steal from me was restored on my terms. Watching him walk away, I felt a small surge of satisfaction. The game had begun, and the board was entirely in my favor. I left the beach house with a heavy, tight knot in my chest. It wasn't just about the money. What stung far worse was how easily Emily had twisted the truth about me. She had spun a story of my frailty, painting me as weak and incapable, and had used that fiction to justify her actions. To her, I wasn't a mother, a person with feelings or history. I was an obstacle she had to remove. That night, I called Mr. Peterson again, my voice steady with resolve. "Mr. Peterson, I need your help with something else," I said. "I want Thomas's truck back as well." "That's going to be trickier," he replied cautiously. "It was in your name, but Emily had a power of attorney allowing her to sell it." I froze. "How is that possible?" "You signed it a few months ago after Thomas passed," he explained. "Do you remember?" And then it hit me. I vaguely remembered signing papers she had brought, claiming they were necessary for funeral arrangements and estate matters. My grief had made me careless, I hadn't read them carefully. How naive I had been. "Can it be recovered?" I asked, determination sharpening my tone. "It's possible, but we'd have to prove you were misled or coerced into signing the power of attorney," Mr. Peterson said. "Do it," I said firmly. "I want everything they took from me back." The weeks that followed developed into a peculiar rhythm. In the mornings, I was the widow everyone assumed I was. I walked to the corner store, chatted with neighbors, nodded politely, and accepted their pity-laced words of concern. But in the afternoons, I transformed into something new, a strategist, a businesswoman. I studied Thomas's files, consulted with Mr. Peterson, and plotted each step carefully. I was learning the intricacies of finance and property law I'd never imagined I would need. Thomas had been more astute than I had realized. Each investment, each property, had been chosen with care. The apartment building where Emily and Daniel lived wasn't just profitable from rents, it was in a district skyrocketing in value. Meanwhile, Daniel's financial recklessness had become apparent. He had taken loans using the apartment as collateral, unaware that he had no real claim. Once the banks discovered the truth, he would face serious trouble. Then came a call from Mr. Peterson one Friday morning, brimming with good news. "Mrs. Hayes, everything is finalized. You now have full control of all your properties. And we've recovered Thomas's truck." The buyer understood the situation and agreed to return it for a modest compensation. "Excellent," I said, satisfaction threading through my voice. "Now, I need you to help with one more thing." "What would that be?" "I want you to send a letter to Emily." There was a pause on the line. "What kind of letter?" "An eviction notice," I replied without hesitation. "Are you certain?" he asked carefully. "Completely." She decided I was irrelevant in her life. It's time she sees how important I really am. "Do you want me to send it to Europe?" "No. Wait for her return. She'll be back soon, I have a feeling." And I wasn't wrong. That very afternoon, Aurora, my neighbor, came rushing over with the latest tidbits from the neighborhood. "Margaret, did you hear? Daniel's in trouble with the bank," she panted. "My brother-in-law works there, apparently he took out loans using their apartment as collateral. But it's not his property." "Really?" I asked, feigning surprise. "Yes. And it seems Emily had no idea. She'll have to come back from Europe to sort this mess out. And apparently Daniel lied about that business opportunity abroad, it doesn't exist. He just wanted to escape his debts." A quiet smile touched my lips. Everything was unfolding exactly as I had anticipated. Emily had trusted Daniel, distanced herself from me, and now she was about to discover he wasn't the man she thought he was. That evening, I sat on the porch, a cup of tea warming my hands. The stars glittered above, just as Thomas had always said, the lights of those who had lived fully, watching over their families from the sky. For the first time since his passing, I felt calm, purposeful, and quietly triumphant. The path ahead was clear, and I intended to walk it on my own terms. If Thomas were watching, I imagined him smiling down from above, seeing every move unfold exactly as he had planned. "Thank you, my love," I whispered to the sky. "Thank you for looking out for me, even now." The next morning, the phone rang early. "Mrs. Hayes, it's Mr. Peterson," his calm voice said. "I have news. Your daughter has just returned to the country. She's at the airport, alone." "Alone?" I asked, a mixture of curiosity and anticipation curling in my chest. "Yes. Apparently, Daniel stayed in Europe. There are rumors they had a serious argument." I let that sink in. "Did you send the letter?" "I will today. She should receive it tomorrow." I hung up and stood in the kitchen, my hands wrapped around a mug of tea. Weeks of careful, quiet planning had led to this moment. Emily was about to learn that her mother was far from defenseless, and that every reckless, selfish choice had consequences. Emily arrived at her apartment late Tuesday night. I learned this the next morning from Aurora, who seemed to have eyes everywhere. "Margaret, your daughter is back," Aurora whispered, almost gleeful. I saw her come in with just one suitcase. She looked pale, exhausted, like she hadn't slept in days. She was alone. And when the doorman asked for her keys, she didn't have them. She had to ask the superintendent for an emergency copy. I smiled quietly. That explained a lot. Daniel had either chosen not to return, or perhaps Emily had discovered something about him and fled. Either way, she was back, and she was about to receive her first surprise. Later that afternoon, Mr. Peterson called. "Mrs. Hayes, the letter has been delivered. The doorman confirms that your daughter received it in person." "Perfect," I said, feeling a thrill of quiet satisfaction. "How long did we give her to comply?" 30 days, as required by law." "But, Mrs. Hayes, are you certain you want to follow through? She is your daughter, after all." I inhaled deeply. "Mr. Peterson, my daughter kicked me out of my own home in a 2-minute phone call. She sold my belongings without asking, treated me with total disregard. It's time she understands that actions have consequences." He was silent for a moment. "I understand. I just want to ensure you've considered the implications." "I have considered them all," I said firmly. That night, sleep eluded me. I pictured Emily reading the notice, confusion first, then disbelief, then panic. At first, she would probably think it was some kind of error, a scam perhaps. But when she verified, she would discover everything was perfectly legal. The following morning, at precisely 8 o'clock, the phone rang. "Mom. Mom, I need your help. Please, I don't know what to do." Emily's voice trembled, barely recognizable from the confident, selfish tone I had grown accustomed to. "Good morning, honey. How was Europe?" I asked calmly. "I don't have time for pleasantries," she snapped. "I received a letter yesterday. It says I have 30 days to vacate my apartment. It must be a mistake. Can you tell me if you know anything about this?" I allowed a small, measured pause. "It's an eviction notice, Emily. From a company you've never heard of. Robert Investments Incorporated." "Robert Investments," she repeated, panic creeping into her voice. "Do you know them?" I felt a quiet satisfaction in the irony. Thomas had built the company under his own name, poetic justice for the daughter who had thought she could erase us. "No, honey. I've never heard of them." "Are you sure the letter is real? Can it be legitimate?" "Yes, it is," I said, keeping my voice steady, calm. "Completely legitimate." Her voice broke. "Mom, please. I don't know what to do. Daniel left me in Europe. He ran off with someone else, and now I come back to this. I need someone to talk to. I have no one else." The irony was almost sweet. The daughter who had abandoned me for a selfish romance now remembered that she had a mother. "Of course, honey," I said softly. "Come to me. We'll figure this out together." For the first time in weeks, Emily's voice sounded small, fragile, and the power balance had shifted entirely. She had gambled on self-interest, and now she would learn the value of family, loyalty, and consequences. I picked up the phone and heard Emily's voice, quiet and pleading. "Mom, can I come over? I need to talk." "Of course, honey. I'll be here," I said, hanging up with a calm I didn't entirely feel. I moved to the mirror and studied myself. Every detail had to be perfect for this performance. I chose a conservative gray dress, pinned my hair into a neat bun, and practiced the expression of a weary, worried mother, vulnerable, exhausted, seemingly defeated. When Emily arrived, she had to see exactly what she expected, a widow abandoned by her only daughter, small and powerless. An hour later, there was a knock at the door. I opened it and stopped for a moment. Emily looked worse than I had imagined. Her once elegant clothes were wrinkled and ill-fitting, her hair disheveled, and her eyes red and hollow. She had clearly been crying. "Mom," she said softly, and for a fleeting second, I thought she might embrace me, but she froze, as though the memory of our last conversation held her back. "Come in, honey. Would you like some coffee?" I offered gently. "Yes, please," she whispered. We sat at the kitchen table, the same one where I had spent weeks poring over Thomas's documents, and I let her settle into the chair, small and fragile like the child she once was. "Mom, I'm so sorry," she began. "For the way I left. For how I treated you." "It's in the past, honey," I said softly. "No, it isn't," she admitted, her voice cracking. "I said horrible things. I treated you terribly. And now," her words faltered. "Now I have no one." I fought the instinct to reach across the table and comfort her. The tears and despair tugged at me, but I remembered the coldness of her voice months ago, the ease with which she had discarded me. I kept my tone measured. "What happened with Daniel?" I asked carefully. Emily hesitated. He left. Went off with some young woman in Paris. And the business in Europe, it was never real. It was all a lie. He just wanted to escape his debts here, and he used the money from selling your house to fund his little adventure." "All the debts?" I asked, arching an eyebrow. "Yes, Mom," she admitted, voice trembling. "Loans taken for years, using the apartment we lived in as collateral. And now I'm finding out I wasn't even the owner. I don't know what to do." I took a slow breath. "Property matters are complicated, honey. You'll need legal guidance. They say I'm responsible because of marriage. And now, the eviction notice." Her voice broke completely. "Mom, I don't have money. I don't have a job. I don't have anywhere to go." Real tears. Genuine despair. For a moment, my heart softened, aching with the urge to console her, to tell her everything would be all right. But then I remembered the call from the doctor's office, the coldness, the casual cruelty, the way she had treated me as if I were nothing. "Did you speak to a lawyer about the letter?" I asked. "I don't have the money, Mom. We spent it all in Europe. Daniel, he took what little remained when he left." "And what do you plan to do now?" I asked, keeping my voice calm. I thought maybe I could stay here, just for a little while, until I get a job and find a small apartment, she admitted, eyes downcast. There it was. The question I had been waiting for. After abandoning me, after selling my things, after treating me like garbage, she was now turning to me for help. The poor, abandoned widow she believed me to be, the one she had created, was now her last lifeline. "Of course, honey," I said softly, letting the words fall gently. "This will always be your home." Emily looked up at me, astonishment and relief flickering across her face. Really, Mom? After everything? You are my daughter, Emily, I said firmly. That will never change. She rose from the chair and embraced me, desperation clinging to her like a lifeline. I returned the hug, but it was measured, strategic, not the unguarded love of before, but a calculated response. Thank you, Mom. I promise I'll find a job soon. I won't be a burden. Don't worry about that now, I said, guiding her gently toward the sofa. Rest. Recover. Then we'll see what your options are. Later that afternoon, Emily went back to her apartment to collect a few things. I remained in the kitchen, sipping tea and thinking quietly. It had been far easier than I expected. She had arrived broken, desperate, with no options, and she suspected nothing. To her, I was still the poor, abandoned mother in need of her pity. But this was only the beginning. Having her under my roof gave me the perfect vantage point for the next phase of the plan. I decided to let Emily settle in, to make her feel safe, to let her believe she had found refuge in my home. And then, when she least expected it, she would learn the difference between being poor by choice and being poor by consequence. That night, I called Mr. Peterson. Mr. Peterson, I need you to do something else for me, I said. Of course, Mrs. Hayes. What do you need? I want you to investigate Daniel's debts. I need to know exactly how much he owes, to whom, and what legal options I have to separate these obligations from my daughter. That will take some time, but it's feasible, he replied. Excellent. And Mr. Peterson, this has to remain completely confidential. No one can know I am behind this. Understood. May I ask what your ultimate plan is? I'm going to save my daughter, I said, my voice steady, but first, she needs to understand what it truly means to hit rock bottom. I hung up, poured a glass of the wine Thomas had saved for special occasions, and held it in my hand for a long moment. It had been a long time since I had a reason to toast to something. The game had begun, and for the first time in months, I held all the good cards. The next day, Emily arrived at my house with 2 suitcases and a cardboard box, the remnants of her former life. I watched as she unpacked in her old bedroom, the room she had slept in during her teenage years. Every motion carried humiliation. From the luxury condo to this childhood refuge, she was learning humility, whether she realized it or not. Mom, I found this in the apartment, she said hesitantly, holding a manila envelope. It was among Daniel's things. It has your name on it. Another one of Dad's envelopes. My heart skipped, but I kept my expression calm. Your name? I asked. Yes, she said, showing me the envelope. It was smaller than the one I had found weeks ago, newer, with my name in Thomas's familiar handwriting. Perhaps Daniel had discovered it among Dad's things after he died and forgotten to give it to me. Can I see it? She asked, her voice tinged with hope. I opened it in her presence. Inside was a short letter and a small brass key. The letter read, Margaret, if you are reading this after receiving the main envelope, it means our daughter is going through a difficult time. This key opens a safety deposit box at the Central Bank, Downtown Branch, number 247. There is something there that can help you help her, but use it wisely. With eternal love, Thomas. Emily peered over my shoulder. A safety deposit box. Dad had a safety deposit box. I didn't know either, I admitted, though it was a careful half-truth. Do you think we should go see what's inside? She asked, desperation creeping into her tone. Maybe there's something important, documents, or money, anything that could help us. I paused deliberately. Perhaps tomorrow, I said finally, letting her anticipation build. She clung to the hope of a solution, and I would let her cling a little longer before revealing the full reality. That evening, we had dinner together for the first time in months. Emily had tried to cook, but the food was heavy with guilt and unease. She recounted the chaos of her time in Europe, each tale more desperate than the last. Daniel lied about everything, Mom, she said, her voice quivering. Not just the business, but the debts too. I thought it was only a small amount, but it's over $100,000. And the worst part, he used my name for some of the loans without me knowing. How is that possible? I asked. He forged my signature. When we married, I gave him some documents to manage our joint accounts. I never imagined he'd use them like this. Do you have any way to prove you didn't know? I don't know. Everything is so complicated. The banks are saying I'm responsible because we were married. And Daniel? I asked quietly. I don't know where he is. He just disappeared. His phone is disconnected. I listened, letting her anxiety and desperation wash over me. Her reliance on me was growing. She was learning, in her own way, that actions have consequences, and I had just begun teaching her. He wasn't answering calls. No texts, no emails, nothing. It was as if Daniel had vanished into thin air. Perfect. He had fled like the coward he always was, leaving Emily to face the consequences of her choices alone. In a strange way, he had done me a favor. Now, my daughter was feeling exactly what I had felt when Thomas passed, abandoned by someone she had trusted completely. I'm so sorry, Mom, Emily whispered, tears in her eyes. I didn't realize how bad things had gotten. I didn't either, I said softly. I thought he loved me, that we were building a life together. But it seems I was just a convenient way for him to get money and documents. Emily began to cry harder, her shoulders shaking. How could I have been so blind? How did I not see who he really was? I resisted the urge to tell her that I had seen the warning signs from the start, that I had tried to protect her from him. That would shatter my performance of the worried, helpless mother she needed to believe in. Love can blind you sometimes, honey. Don't blame yourself, I murmured. But Mom, she sobbed, I didn't just ruin my life. I ruined yours too. I treated you terribly. I sold your house, your truck, your things, all for a man who abandoned me the moment he had the chance. Now we're both stuck, struggling to survive because of me. It's in the past, Emily. We'll be fine, I said, keeping my voice calm, though inside I was calculating. No, it's not just in the past. Now we're both in trouble. I lost my marriage, my future, and you lost everything Dad left you. We're two women trying to survive because of my mistakes. If only she knew. At this very moment, I had more money than she could even imagine. I owned the building she lived in, the beach house, and could solve all her problems with a single call. But it wasn't time yet. The next day, we went to the bank together. Emily was anxious, hopeful, clinging to the faintest possibility that something could salvage her life. I maintained my act, pretending to be confused and overwhelmed by finances. The bank employee escorted us to the safety deposit boxes, verified my ID, and unlocked box number 247. Inside was a dazzling collection of jewels, rings, necklaces, bracelets, earrings. Some were heirlooms from Thomas's family, others were newer, clearly investments he had made over the years. There was also a small letter explaining the provenance and approximate value of each piece. Emily gasped. Mom, this must be worth a fortune. Perhaps, I said, casually inspecting a pearl necklace with emeralds. Look at this one. Dad really planned for everything. According to Thomas's note, the jewels were valued at roughly $200,000, a significant sum, but a drop in the ocean compared to the rest of our holdings. It was like finding a few coins under the couch when you already had a fortune in the bank. What do we do with this, Mom? Emily asked eagerly. I don't know, honey. They're family memories. We should treat them carefully, I said, keeping my voice measured. But Mom, she argued, we could sell some of the pieces. With this money, we could get the beach house back, and I could pay off some of Daniel's debts. The instinctive reaction, using anything valuable to bail out Daniel, was exactly what I had expected. Are you sure you want to use your father's inheritance to pay his debts? I asked gently. What other option do I have? If I don't pay soon, the banks will foreclose on everything. And technically, none of it is in my name, they're all in Daniel's, she said, desperation seeping into her voice. Think carefully, Emily, I warned. Once these jewels are sold, they can't be recovered. I know, but what choice do I have? With all these legal claims pending, no employer will touch me. I can't get a job until it's sorted. We took the jewels home. Emily spread them out across the kitchen table, examining each piece, mentally calculating which to sell and which to keep. Watching her reduce decades of family history to dollar values was almost painful, yet I remained silent. Mom, I think I can get about $180,000 for the jewels, she said one afternoon, counting the bills on the table. It's less than I expected, but it's enough to pay the most urgent debts. Are you certain about this? I asked calmly. I have no choice. If I don't pay soon, they'll take everything. Even this house could be at risk if they prove I have legal ties to the other properties, she said, despair heavy in her tone. The irony of it all wasn't lost on me. She had treated me like disposable property, yet now her survival depended on the very legacy Thomas and I had built. Emily was pacing the living room, counting bills and making notes, her face a mixture of worry and determination. She was anxious about saving the apartment she lived in, a property I actually owned, and paying off the debts of a man who had abandoned her, all with money from jewels that had belonged to the same man who had built the fortune that could have easily solved all her problems. The irony was almost cruel. And how do you plan to decide which debts to tackle first? I asked, maintaining my calm, measured tone. I spoke to a financial advisor at the bank, she said, her voice tight with concentration. She said to start with the loans that have real collateral. Those are the ones that could lead to foreclosure immediately or threaten my home. In just a few weeks, Emily had changed. The woman who had sold my things without a word was now methodical, cautious, and painfully aware of every step she took. The hardships had matured her, but the stress had also made her fragile, like a delicate glass figurine being handled with care. That evening, while she organized stacks of documents on the dining table, my phone rang. It was Mr. Peterson. Mrs. Hayes, I have a full report on Daniel's debts. The situation is worse than I anticipated. How much worse? I asked. Over $200,000 in total, owed to multiple banks and several private lenders. And there's something more concerning. He used falsified documents with your daughter's signature on some of these loans. That could make her legally responsible. I felt a surge of protective determination. Can we prove she didn't know? Possibly, but it will be long and costly. A skilled lawyer specializing in these cases would charge around $50,000, and there are no guarantees. I nodded, even though Mr. Peterson couldn't see me. Prepare everything necessary to protect her legally, but don't tell her a word yet. She doesn't need to know right now. I will handle this, whatever it takes, but it must be done discreetly. After hanging up, I looked across the room at Emily. She was staring at the jewels on the table, her expression clouded with sorrow and guilt. She looked small, lost, as though she had shattered a precious toy and didn't know how to fix it. What's on your mind, honey? I asked gently. Dad, what would he think if he could see me now? How disappointed he would be. I took her hand. Thomas loved you deeply, Emily. He would understand. No, Mom, she whispered, her voice breaking. He taught me to respect family, to cherish what we have, to be responsible. And I did the opposite. I abandoned you for Daniel, a man who lied to me. I sold our family's memories, squandered what Dad built. I ruined everything. Her words carried a raw honesty I had been waiting to hear. This wasn't just regret for consequences, it was the acknowledgement of a moral failure, the recognition of wrongdoing. People make mistakes, honey, I said softly. The important thing is to learn from them. To understand what went wrong and how to make it right. But how do I fix it, Mom? She asked, her voice trembling. How do I repair all the damage I caused? That was the moment I had been waiting for. Emily was finally ready to confront the reality of her actions. She had reached the threshold of accountability. But I would not reveal the full extent of my plans just yet. She needed to experience the consequences fully, to understand the weight of her decisions. Over the next few days, Emily worked diligently to sell most of the jewels, keeping only my engagement ring and a small heirloom necklace from her grandmother. I watched her methodically research buyers, negotiate prices, and hand over pieces one by one. It was almost painful, seeing her reduce decades of family history into numbers and transactions, but it was a lesson she needed to learn. Mom, I got $180,000 for the jewels, she said one afternoon, carefully counting the bills across the kitchen table. It's less than I hoped, but it's enough to pay the most urgent debts. Are you certain this is the right decision? I asked, keeping my voice steady. I have no choice. If I don't pay something soon, they'll foreclose on everything. Even this house could be at risk if they realize I have a connection to the other properties, she said, a trace of panic in her tone. The irony was not lost on me. Emily was fretting over losing a home I legally owned, scrambling to pay off the obligations of a man who had abandoned her, using money from the very jewels that had been saved by her father, the same man whose foresight had built the fortune that could have spared all this suffering. And yet, I watched her with a sense of quiet satisfaction. The lessons were painful, but they were necessary. She was learning responsibility, accountability, and the value of true family loyalty, all at the precise moment she needed them most. And how will you decide which debts to tackle first? I asked, trying to sound casual as I poured myself a cup of tea. I spoke with a financial advisor at the bank, Emily replied, her voice tight with focus. She said to prioritize the debts that have real collateral. Those are the ones that could lead to foreclosure or put the apartment at immediate risk. The change in her over the past few weeks was remarkable. The girl who had sold my belongings without a thought was now methodical, deliberate, and painfully aware of every financial step she took. The experience had made her wiser but also fragile, as if the weight of responsibility had aged her overnight. That evening, while she spread loan statements across the table and calculated the numbers, my phone rang. It was Mr. Peterson. Margaret, I have significant news, he said, his voice steady. We've located Daniel. Where is he? I asked. Paris, he replied, just as your daughter suspected. But here's the most interesting part, he's attempting to obtain French residency through a sham marriage with that young woman Emily mentioned. A sham marriage? I echoed, raising an eyebrow. Yes, he continued. She needs papers, he needs a way to remain in Europe without deportation. But the most important detail, we've uncovered evidence that he intentionally falsified Emily's documents to flee the country. That means your daughter can be absolved of all the debts. My pulse quickened. With this proof, Emily could be legally cleared of every obligation Daniel had created in her name. And she would never know that I had silently orchestrated her rescue. Mr. Peterson, I said firmly, start the legal process immediately. Don't tell Emily a word. I want the entire process completed before she finds out. No false hope. Understood, Mrs. Hayes. It will take 3 to 4 weeks to finalize everything, he said. Perfect, I replied, hanging up. Emily looked at me curiously. Who was that on the phone, Mom? Just someone asking about Mrs. Davis, the neighbor. Wrong number, I lied effortlessly. Each day, this double life became easier to maintain. To Emily, I was still the poor, vulnerable mother she had abandoned. In reality, I was wealthy, quietly orchestrating her salvation and teaching her lessons she had never learned. The next 2 weeks were grueling, for her, not for me. I watched Emily confront the consequences of her past choices, stretching every dollar, negotiating with creditors, applying for jobs despite her ruined credit, and facing a reality she had never imagined. "Mom, I went to 3 job interviews today," she said one evening, sitting down with swollen feet and a weary expression. "2 said they can't hire me because of my legal issues. The 3rd offered me a part-time job cleaning offices at night. Will you take it?" I asked, hiding my mixture of pride and heartbreak. "I have no choice," she admitted. "It pays very little, but it's something. I can work nights and continue looking for a better position during the day." Seeing my daughter, who had lived in comfort for over 40 years, preparing to clean offices at night, both broke my heart and filled me with quiet pride. She was finally facing reality without expecting anyone else to solve her problems. "Are you sure you can handle so much work?" I asked gently. "I'll learn," she replied. "I can't stay a burden. I appreciate everything, Mom, but I need to stand on my own feet." "This is your home, Emily," I said. "No, Mom. This is your home. I'm here because of your generosity, but I won't take advantage forever." Later that week, as Emily worked her first evening shift, Aurora came over. We sat together in the kitchen, sipping tea and looking at old family photographs. "Margaret, I have to ask," she said softly, "did you know Emily was going to come back like this?" "What do you mean?" I asked. "When she left, she was so confident, so certain about her life in Europe. She bragged about Daniel's success and the life they would have. And now, look at her. She's back, completely broken, cleaning offices, living here again. Life really does take unexpected turns." "Yes, Aurora," I said, my eyes on Emily as she unpacked her cleaning supplies, "but there's more to it than that." Aurora looked at me, sensing there was something I wasn't saying. She didn't know that my daughter's hardships were a lesson carefully orchestrated, not punishment, but a chance to understand responsibility, the weight of her actions, and the importance of family loyalty. Emily was finally learning, in the harshest but most effective way, that choices have consequences, and that sometimes, the strongest guidance comes not from telling someone what to do, but letting them experience life's lessons firsthand. I had been watching Emily these past days, and there was a change in her I couldn't ignore. She didn't just look tired or sorrowful, there was a humility in her, a quiet gravity, as if she had finally begun to understand something she had always taken for granted. Aurora, who had a keen eye for human nature, noticed it too. "She looks different, Margaret," Aurora said one afternoon as we sat on the porch. "Not just sad, but softer, more thoughtful. I think she's learning something important." I nodded slowly. "And what do you think she's learned?" Aurora smiled gently. "She's beginning to see the value of the things she overlooked for so long. A mother who loves her unconditionally, a home, the family that's always been there for her." I hesitated, then leaned closer. "Aurora, can I tell you something?" "Of course," she replied. "When Emily left and treated me so poorly, everyone assumed I would never forgive her. And yet, here I am, giving her shelter, helping her rebuild. And the truth is, she has no idea I could fix all of her problems instantly. I've been letting her face this struggle, just enough so she can learn the lesson fully. Do you think I'm doing the right thing?" Aurora considered my words carefully. "Margaret, you're doing what a good mother would do. But she needs to understand fully what she lost when she abandoned you. She needs to recognize that your life, your efforts, your stability for 45 years weren't just conveniences, your life was the result of choices, hard work, and love. She needs to respect that, not just need you when she's desperate." Her words struck me like a pinpoint of clarity. That was exactly the goal of my plan. I didn't want Emily to come back to me out of fear or desperation. I wanted her return to be motivated by genuine respect and mature love, by the recognition of a mother who had quietly built a life worth honoring. And how will you know if that happens? I asked. I think it's already happening, Aurora said softly. The way she speaks to you now, the way she looks at you, it's completely different. She's no longer the demanding, entitled daughter. She's beginning to see you as a strong woman, someone to admire, not just a safety net. That night, when Emily returned from her first cleaning shift, I noticed a subtle but undeniable change. She walked with a measured pace, exhausted but dignified. She had earned every dollar with her own effort, and I could see that sense of accomplishment in her eyes. How was your first day? I asked as we sat together in the kitchen. Harder than I expected, she admitted, but not impossible. The other women there helped me a lot. Mrs. Johnson, she's been cleaning offices for 20 years, taught me how to work efficiently. Mrs. Johnson? I asked. Yes, Emily said. She told me she started this job after her husband left her with 3 kids. She said it's not glamorous, but it gave her independence and dignity. And then she asked me a question that made me think hard: which kind of person ends up in this line of work? Those who never had opportunities, or those who ruined the opportunities they had? And what did you say? I told her the truth. I had everything: a family who loved me, a stable home, inheritance, and I threw it away chasing a worthless man. I ruined it all. She just laughed and said, well, then you know exactly why you're here. That already puts you ahead of most people. I listened to her words, my heart both heavy and proud. She was finally acknowledging the mistakes she had made, taking responsibility for them instead of blaming others. Emily poured herself a glass of water and sat across from me at the kitchen table. Mom, she said, her voice quiet but earnest, these weeks have been the hardest of my life, but also the most important. Why? I asked, leaning forward. Because I finally understand what matters, she said. It's not money, or luxury, or appearances. It's having people who genuinely love you, who are there when everything falls apart. I reached for her hand. Emily, I already forgave you for leaving. But it's good that you're seeing the truth for yourself. That's how real growth happens. No, Mom, she said, shaking her head. I haven't forgiven myself yet. I won't, until I've proven that I've truly changed, that I've learned from all of it. The next morning, Mr. Peterson called. Mrs. Hayes, I have excellent news, he said. The legal process is almost complete. Your daughter will be absolved of all of Daniel's fraudulent debts. It was time. After weeks of observing Emily wrestle with her mistakes, face hardship, and reflect on her actions, the moment had arrived. She had never been truly alone, someone had always been quietly watching over her, but now, she would see that the lessons she had endured were meant to guide her, not punish her. And in that realization, she would finally understand the true measure of love, responsibility, and the strength that comes from being tested by life itself. Mr. Peterson, I want you to arrange a meeting, I said firmly. It's time for Emily to know everything, the whole truth. A few days later, Mr. Peterson scheduled the meeting for Friday morning at his office. I told Emily I had arranged an appointment with a lawyer who could help her sort out the legal problems she had inherited from Daniel, though I left out the details. She agreed to come, anxious about the potential costs. Mom, I don't have money to pay a lawyer. I barely have enough to cover rent and groceries, she said nervously. Don't worry about that right now, honey, I reassured her. Let's just listen to what he has to say. We arrived at Mr. Peterson's office promptly. Emily had dressed carefully, choosing her best clothes, which now hung slightly loose on her slimmer frame. She fidgeted, wringing her hands, bracing herself for more bad news. Mrs. Hayes, Miss Hayes, thank you for coming," Mr. Peterson greeted us with his customary calm and professional smile. "Thank you for seeing us," Emily replied, her voice cautious. "I should warn you," she continued, "my financial situation is very complicated. I don't know if I can afford any substantial fees." "That's exactly what we're here to discuss," Mr. Peterson said, glancing at me. "But first, please review these documents." He handed Emily a thick folder. As she flipped through the papers, confusion slowly turned to astonishment. "I don't understand," she murmured. "These documents say that Daniel forged my signature, that there's evidence of fraud, and that I'm not legally responsible for his debts. How is this possible? Who paid for this investigation? I can't afford something like this." I leaned forward, my heart steady, and finally spoke. "Emily, there's something I need to tell you." "What, Mom?" she asked, glancing up at me, worry etched on her face. I took a deep breath. After weeks of careful planning, it was time to reveal the truth. "Your father left me more than you realized, much more than you ever knew." "What do you mean?" Emily asked, her voice rising slightly, a mix of disbelief and curiosity. "Mr. Peterson," I said, "show her everything." He handed her a second folder. This one contained the full picture: property deeds, bank statements, investment certificates, and documents detailing the vast fortune my late husband had quietly built over the years. Emily read in stunned silence. Her face shifted from confusion to disbelief, then to shock, and finally, a dawning comprehension. "Mom, this says you're the owner of the building where I was living," she whispered. "Yes," I said quietly. "And the beach house you thought you had sold. That was mine too. I've already recovered it." Emily looked at me, her eyes wide. How long have you known?" "Since the day you called from Europe, asking for help," I said gently. "I knew I could handle everything when I saw you struggling, when I knew you were afraid and alone." She closed the folders and looked directly into my eyes, tears welling up. "Why, Mom? Why did you let me suffer like this when you could have helped me?" I held her gaze. "Because some lessons can't be taught any other way. You needed to learn the true value of what you had: family, respect, responsibility, dignity, and trust. When you abandoned me, it wasn't just property you risked losing. It was love, it was faith, it was the bond that ties a family together." Emily began to cry, but these were not the tears of self-pity she had shed in the weeks before. They were tears of understanding and reflection. "I abandoned you when you needed me most," she whispered. "Yes," I said softly. "You treated me poorly, and yet, I still chose to protect you. But not by giving you a quick fix, not by handing you money to repeat the same mistakes. I let you face your lowest point so you could learn how to rise on your own." Mr. Peterson interjected quietly, "Miss Hayes, your mother has already covered all legal fees. You are fully relieved of Daniel's fraudulent debts." Emily's gaze returned to me, wide and incredulous, and for the first time in weeks, I saw a spark of genuine gratitude and respect in her eyes, a recognition of the love, wisdom, and guidance that had always been there, quietly waiting for her to understand. And at that moment, I knew the lesson had been learned. Not through fear, not through anger, but through the most enduring teacher of all, consequence tempered by love. "She's recovered everything," I said softly, watching Emily process the news. "All the properties that were taken fraudulently are back in her name. You're free of any legal issues. And the cleaning job I started," she began, hesitating. "You don't have to keep it if you don't want to," I said, though my voice carried a hint of hope. "But I hope you do." "Why?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "Because that job is teaching you something that money or comfort never could," I explained. "It's showing you the value of your own effort, the dignity of honest work, and the importance of appreciating every dollar you earn." Emily wiped the tears from her eyes and looked at me with an expression I hadn't seen in years. It wasn't the gaze of a dependent child, it was the look of a grown woman who recognized and respected another woman's strength. "Do you forgive me, Mom?" she asked, her voice quiet. "I forgave you a long time ago, honey," I replied. "The real question is, can you forgive yourself?" "I don't know if I can," she admitted. "I did things I can't undo." "People make mistakes, Emily. What matters most is what we do after we recognize them," I said gently. Mr. Peterson quietly stepped out, giving us a few minutes alone. Emily and I sat in silence, absorbing everything that had just been revealed. "Mom, I want you to know something," she finally said. "Even if you hadn't had all this wealth, even if you really were the struggling widow I thought you were, I still would have learned the same lesson." "What lesson?" I asked. "That the most valuable things in life aren't money or luxury," she said, her voice steady. "It's having people who love you unconditionally." During these past weeks, the only thing that kept me grounded was knowing I had a home with you. That no matter how badly I messed up, you were still my mother. "That will never change, Emily," I said. "But you're right, you can't take that love for granted. You have to honor it every day, through your actions, your respect, your gratitude." We left Mr. Peterson's office with a bond transformed. We were no longer just mother and daughter by blood or habit. We were two women who had chosen each other through hardship, who had been tested by circumstance and had emerged with mutual respect and understanding. In the weeks that followed, we began rebuilding our lives, but not in the way Emily had imagined. Even though she now knew I had the means to solve every problem for her, she insisted on keeping her night cleaning job. "Mom, I need to finish what I started," she told me one afternoon as she prepared for work. "I can't just go back to comfort as if nothing happened." "Are you sure?" I asked gently. "You don't need to punish yourself forever." "It's not a punishment," she replied firmly. "It's a way to remember who I was, and who I want to be now." I watched her put on the uniform, something unthinkable just months ago when she had lived in luxury with Daniel. But there was something different in her posture, in the way she carried herself. She wasn't broken anymore. She had discovered dignity in her own effort. Later that afternoon, Aurora visited, as she had been doing regularly since Emily returned. "Antonia," she said, leaning back with a thoughtful expression, "there are some strange rumors circulating in the neighborhood." "What kind of rumors?" I asked. "They say you're not as poor as everyone thought. People saw Emily leaving a very elegant lawyer's office downtown and then paying off her debts at the bank. Some say you even got the beach house back." "People will always talk, Aurora," I said calmly. "Yes, but I need to know the truth," she pressed. "Has my friend of 40 years been lying about her situation?" I poured a cup of tea and sat down across from her. It was time to tell someone else the truth. "Robert left me far more than anyone knew, Aurora. Enough that neither Emily nor I will ever have to worry about money again." Aurora paused, processing my words. "And why did you pretend to be struggling all these months?" she asked. "Because Emily needed to learn a lesson she couldn't learn any other way," I admitted. I recounted everything, the cruel phone call that had started it all, my careful plan to let her face consequences, the weeks of watching her struggle, and the ultimate revelation at Mr. Peterson's office. Aurora shook her head slowly. "Antonia, that is both brilliant and ruthless at the same time." I smiled faintly. "Yes, it is. But it worked. She's learned respect, responsibility, and humility. She's come back not just as my daughter, but as a woman who understands the value of what she has, and the price of what she lost." Emily's transformation wasn't instantaneous, but it was real. And for the first time, I felt certain that the lessons she had learned would guide her for the rest of her life. "Terrible," Aurora said, shaking her head. "Because you let your own daughter suffer when you could have helped her immediately. But, also brilliant." "I understand why you say that," I replied. "You do?" Yes. Emily needed to learn the value of what she had lost. If I had simply solved everything for her with money, she would have learned that someone else always cleans up her mistakes. Aurora nodded slowly. Exactly. But Antonia, didn't it hurt, seeing her go through all that? Every day, I admitted. Every night, I watched her cry. Every morning, I watched her get up exhausted and defeated, going to work she had never imagined she'd have. But I knew that rescuing her too soon would have deprived her of the lesson she truly needed. And do you think she learned it? Look at her, I said. She knows she has enough money to live comfortably, yet she chose to keep her job. She could have moved somewhere nicer, but she decided to stay here, with me. She knows she is free from the debts Edward left behind, yet she uses her own earnings to help other women facing similar struggles. She's helping others. Aurora's eyes widened. Yes. She became close with her co-workers, and she's assisting one of them who was struggling to pay for her child's daycare. Aurora smiled, a mixture of awe and approval in her expression. That's not the Emily who went to Europe. No, I agreed. This Emily understands that money is a tool, not a goal. She has learned that dignity comes from work, respect, and integrity, not from material possessions. That evening, Emily returned home, tired but with a quiet sense of accomplishment. She found me reading in the living room. Mom, I have to tell you something, she said, taking a seat beside me. Today, Mrs. Johnson asked me if I was the daughter of the wealthy lady from the north side. What did you tell her? I asked. I said yes, that you have enough resources for me not to have to work. And do you know what she asked next? What? She asked why I was still working. I explained that I need to prove to myself that I can stand on my own 2 feet. And her response? She laughed and said, "Honey, that's the difference between being rich and acting rich. Your mother taught you how to be truly rich." Mrs. Johnson sounds wise. She is, Emily said. She made me realize something important. It's not the money you have that matters, it's how you use it, and how you let it shape your character. Emily leaned back, her eyes calm and determined. Mom, I've made a decision. I'm going to stay here with you, not as a daughter returning home out of need, but as a grown woman choosing to share her life with her mother. What's the difference? I asked. The difference, she said, is that I'll contribute. I'll pay my share of the household expenses. I'll treat this home as a partnership between 2 independent women who love and respect each other. You don't need to do that, I said softly. Yes, I do, she replied. I want our relationship to be different from what it was before. Before, I took your love and care for granted. Now, I want to be a grown woman who values the most important relationship in her life. And the job? I asked. I'll keep working, but I don't plan to clean offices forever. I want to go back to school, build a future step by step, earning every opportunity honestly. Do you know what you want to study? Yes. Social work. These past weeks have shown me how many people face difficult situations with no one to support them. I want to use my experience and our resources to help women going through what I went through. I felt a wave of pride. Emily had not only learned to value what she had, but she had found a purpose in her experiences. And what about Edward? I asked. Mr. Peterson said he was arrested in France for that fraudulent marriage. He'll be deported soon. But honestly, Mom, I don't care anymore. That chapter of my life is over. You feel no resentment? No. Edward did me a favor without even realizing it, she said, a small, resolute smile on her face. In that moment, I knew that Emily had transformed, not just by the trials she endured, but by the lessons she had chosen to embrace. She had emerged stronger, wiser, and more compassionate, ready to face life on her own terms while keeping the bond between us intact and honored. If Edward had never abandoned and deceived me, I would never have seen the bottom. And if I hadn't hit that bottom, I would never have learned what it truly means to value what you have. That night, for the first time in months, I went to bed feeling completely calm. My plan had worked exactly as it should. Emily had not only learned the lessons she needed, but she had emerged stronger, wiser, and more compassionate than I had ever imagined. Thomas would have been so proud. 6 months later, our lives had settled into a rhythm neither of us could have foreseen. Emily had completed her social work degree with outstanding marks, and I had decided to use part of our resources to create a foundation aimed at helping women facing domestic violence or financial exploitation. "Mom," Emily called one morning, walking into the kitchen clutching an envelope. The university letter arrived. "And?" I asked, trying to hide my anticipation. "I've been accepted into the master's program. Next semester, I start classes. But Mom, I want to pay for it with my own savings, from my job at the city. The salary isn't high, but I've been careful." "Are you certain?" "We can easily cover it," I said. "I know, but I need to do it myself. It's part of who I am now," she said firmly. Emily had learned to live simply, to value every dollar she earned, and more importantly, to measure success by effort and integrity rather than wealth. Later that afternoon, Aurora came by, as she had for months every Friday. She poured herself a cup of tea and settled across from me. "Antonia, I have to confess something," she said, her voice thoughtful. "At first, I thought you were being unnecessarily harsh with Emily. And now?" I asked. "Now. I think you are the wisest mother I've ever known. Look at her. Really look at her." I followed her gaze. Emily was in the living room, deeply focused on her textbooks. She was calm, centered, confident, not the spoiled, arrogant woman who had left for Europe months ago. This Emily radiated a quiet assurance, the kind that comes from accomplishing something through effort rather than privilege. "I saw her yesterday at the grocery store," Aurora continued. "She was buying vegetables for a family she's helping through her work. She didn't tell me, and when I asked why she wasn't using the government support budget, she said some things can't be measured in official numbers." That night, we had dinner on the porch, a quiet ritual we had grown to cherish. Emily sat across from me, cutting her salad with care. "Mom," she said, breaking the comfortable silence, "I received a strange letter today." "From whom?" I asked, my body tightening. "Edward." "Edward?" My mind froze. "Yes. From prison in France. He's been sentenced to 2 years for marriage fraud. He claims he regrets everything he did and wants to ask for my forgiveness." "And how do you feel about it?" I asked, bracing myself. "Honestly, nothing. No anger, no sadness, no desire for revenge. It's as if that part of my life happened decades ago, not months ago." "Will you write back?" I asked quietly. "No. Not because I hate him, but because there's nothing to say. That Emily no longer exists. The Emily who married him is gone. There's no conversation left to have with that person." Her voice carried a quiet authority that made me pause. The young woman before me had grown into someone strong, capable of standing on her own. "Do you know what this whole experience taught me, Mom?" she asked, eyes fixed on the fading light of the porch. "What?" I said. "That true love isn't the one that tells you what you want to hear. True love is the one that teaches you what you need to learn, even when it hurts. It's difficult, but necessary." I nodded. "Edward told me what I wanted to hear. He made me feel special, promised me a life of luxury without effort. You," she said, looking directly at me, "you taught me that real wealth comes from work, respect, and genuine relationships. That it comes from the people who care for you unconditionally, not the things you own." After she went to her room to study, I remained on the porch, staring at the stars, thinking about Thomas. I had promised him I would guide our daughter safely through life's storms. That night, I finally felt that I had kept my promise, not by shielding her from the hardships, but by letting her face them, rise, and discover her own strength. The lesson had been harsh, but the result was pure. Emily had emerged not just unbroken, but truly empowered. I hadn't guided Emily by giving her money when she needed it. I had guided her by showing her how to take care of herself. I hadn't rescued her by solving her problems. I had rescued her by giving her the space to learn how to solve them on her own. The following Sunday, we planned a visit to the beach house together, for the first time since I had reclaimed it. Emily had hesitated before, saying she needed time to process everything that had happened. "Are you ready?" I asked as we climbed into the truck. "I think so," she replied softly. The ride was quiet, but there was a comfortable calm between us. When we arrived, Emily lingered for a moment, gazing at the house where we had spent so many summers as a family. "It looks just like I remember," she finally said. "Some things don't change, but some things do. I'm not the same person who sold this house." We went inside together. The house was immaculate, preserved as Robert and I had always maintained it. Emily walked from room to room, running her hands along the furniture, pausing at family photos on the walls. "Mom," she said quietly, "I want to apologize." "You already did, honey," I replied. "No," she insisted, her voice firm but gentle. "I want to apologize specifically for this house. Not just for selling it, but for turning all our family memories into money for someone who didn't deserve it." "It's forgiven," I said. "This house holds 40 years of family summers, birthdays, Christmases. Your father built this porch with his own hands. You planted the garden. I learned to swim on this beach. And even when you sold it, you didn't destroy the memories, we carried them with us." She sat on the sofa where Thomas used to read on Sunday mornings. "Do you know what hurts me the most?" she asked, her eyes glistening. "What?" "When I sold it, I didn't feel anything. It was just another property. Now, being here, I can feel Dad in every corner. I hear his laughter, smell his morning coffee, see his glasses on the table." "He's here, Emily," I said softly. "He's always been here." "I know," she replied, "and I also know he would be proud of how you handled everything." We spent the day in the house together, cooking, cleaning, and fixing little details that had gone unnoticed. It was more than maintenance, it was a ritual of reconnection, a celebration of the values the house represented. As the sun began to set, we sat on the porch Thomas had built, watching the ocean waves. "Mom," Emily said after a long pause, "I have a proposal." "What is it?" "I want us to turn this house into a temporary shelter for women leaving abusive relationships or difficult circumstances. A place where they can rebuild their lives safely." It was a perfect idea. Thomas would have loved it, his home helping other families. "That's beautiful, Emily. We can use part of the foundation's resources to maintain it, and I can help manage the program," I said. "Are you sure you want to turn our family sanctuary into that?" she asked. "The best sanctuaries," I said, smiling, "are the ones that are shared. Your father always said a house isn't truly a home until it opens its doors to those who need love." He was right. Thomas had always been generous with our home, welcoming relatives, friends, or neighbors who needed shelter. That night, we returned home with a new purpose and a relationship completely renewed. We were no longer mother and daughter bound by blood or habit. We were two women who had chosen each other, committed to building a life together founded on respect, love, and a shared mission. Before drifting to sleep, I spoke quietly to Thomas in my mind. "We did it, my love. Emily finally understands what truly matters." For the first time since his passing, I felt him answer me. "I always knew she would. You've both grown stronger than you realize. Justice had arrived not as revenge, but as education. Not as punishment, but as transformation. And in the end, we gained something far more valuable than money. We gained an authentic bond, a foundation that no future challenge could shake. Emily's voice still echoed in my mind as I thought of the days ahead. She had learned that true wealth is measured by effort, integrity, and love. And now, together, we would help others discover that same truth. The story of our journey wasn't just ours, it was a lesson, a legacy, and a testament to the power of love, resilience, and family.